Welcome to The Rounds, our roundtable events where we discuss emerging and disruptive technologies and trends. If you're a strategic business or technology leader and are building competitive advantage, you're in the right place. We regularly bring together top end user and vendor executives to share their perspectives and real-world expertise. Today's discussion focuses on the rationale for clouds and cloud-critical success factors. Joining us along with our host, Cal Braunstein, CEO and Executive Director of Research at Robert Francis Group, are Carlos Pereira, Distinguished Systems Engineer, Worldwide DC and Cloud at Cisco, Diogenes Rittori, OpenShift Product Manager at Red Hat, Joe McKenna, former VP Distributed Hosting Architecture and Engineering at Fidelity Investments, and Jeff Schaefer, Senior Technical Staff Member, Chief Security Architect, Cloud Managed Services at IBM.
When people do the business cases, I've seen two scenarios coming up. One is the development people saying, we're going to the cloud, and if we go to the cloud, and usually they're thinking public cloud because they're thinking with their credit card in mind. And the business case is tied to the fact how much more rapidly I can get product out there, and it drives revenue stream or business loyalty or other things that they view from the pure business side. When it gets thrown over the transom to the IT staff and says, well, build the business case, they don't think about potential revenue stream, they think about hard dollar costs, and they struggle building a business case, right? So which way is right?
I would abstract this a little further and look for the real business case, the business side of the house. There is a lot of transformation that those companies need to evolve towards getting more competitive, getting more agile, towards digitization that's happening across everything that's going on. So this is a business transformation that's going on. In order for that to happen in those companies, they need to evolve how they operate. So it's an operational model change, which evolves towards a consumption. When cloud is just one operation model that allows them to consume faster and be more agile towards the whole end business case. So if you look just for the sake of my developers is going to go to the cloud because it's faster versus the IT legacy environment that has all the risk assessment that prevent them to go, you're going to be under deadlock. And even if you evolve towards DevOps, which is something that helps on that agility, the real business case can be seen just as a siloed, how many dollars I can save or spend more on this particular cloud matters. But how is the company evolving his business transactions towards where it needs to go, towards a more digital world, towards paperless, towards more kind of different business models?
For me, it's related also to the type of workloads. So what justifies running on the public cloud and what justifies running on the private cloud? And I see ideally a private cloud where you have workloads of, let's say, with different characteristics, to the point where you can even achieve, let's say, 90-95% of utilization of your private cloud, because you had called principles and guiding principles and policies that drove how you define the characteristics of your workload. And workloads that can be scaled up and down, that can be disposed, and workloads that allow for a higher consumption of your internal resources to justify either both public or private.
It comes down to what you need to run in it, right? So if you have highly regulated, highly industry-driven workloads that can't run in a public place, you may not have a choice. So it may not come down to that, but at least you get some agility and some of the time to market with it that you don't have with traditional infrastructure.
And then I think, as we were trying to do cost comparisons and how did we rank relative to our peers in delivering our services, compute, storage, and network. And then, not only in the financial industry, let's compare ourselves to also cloud providers. And when you really look at cloud providers, it's that cost of compute and the cost of the amount of storage you're using. But then there's the network bandwidth and the storage bandwidth that you're starting to use. So there's other things depending on the application, and I think that goes back to Diogenes' point of what workloads go out there. Maybe something that's extremely high I/O, be it network or storage, might not be cheaper to put out there, might be cheaper to build that infrastructure and deliver those services internally. Absolutely. So it really comes down to understanding workloads, understanding the costs and the structures and the different pieces.
I can't stress enough the importance of being hybrid to avoid lock-in. So for me, the fact that you design for hybrid will make your guiding principles force you to design for hybrid, for design for workloads that can be moved across, design for locking yourselves with a vendor or a provider specific technology that requires a painful change to adapt to another vendor's.
We heard some numbers, in a conversation recently about $2.9 billion a quarter or something like that to build out Google Cloud, or it's a ridiculous amount of money that they're spending, an amount of infrastructure they're putting into a cloud. Even as a big enterprise, there's just no way we compete at that level of hardware being available for variable usage to come up and down. So when you get to that on-premise cloud, there's got to be some finite definition as far as what you're going to do. Now, is it going to be for all my workloads at peak, or am I going to then say all my critical workloads at peak plus some buffer, and then good workload management to shut down the non-critical workloads, kind of like we did on the mainframe back in the old day and still do. The mainframe, when it gets busy, you shut down all the developers and everything else and grab those MIPS to do the business. Do I shut down all the non-essential work and then run the business on the private cloud? If you're bursting, there was a gentleman that came up with the term data gravity, and I said, it's not quite right, it's data anchor, because I'm bursting out and dragging the anchor with me as I'm trying to burst. Either I'm staging that data outside to burst out if I need it, or I'm going to take a huge performance hit. Those types of things are things that I still, at least I'm not comfortable. I'd love to hear some of the other feedback from the others as far as what they do.
Yeah, I also always to think from the perspective of the application that is consuming those resources, because in the end, everything that we do, like our companies, everything that we do is to enable an application that represents business value to be in place. And taking from the perspective of the application, workloads should be created in a way that allow for disposability, allow for ability to move across different environments. Although most of the workloads that are out there, I'm not going to call it legacy, but the workloads that are out there, they have not been created with this in mind. Right. So it's going to take some time for the, let's say, cloud native or cloud ready, even cloud ready workloads to be present that will avoid lock-in, that will enable, let's say, higher consumption of the resources you're paying with. Because essentially, if you're renting a VM, you want to use 98% of the processor. Anything that you don't use, it's money that's on the table. And if you see your data center, just see your data center or the whole public or private cloud as one big machine, right? Ideally, you should be always at peak with that, because not being at peak means that there is money that you are paying for that you're not using. But you can only be at peak if the workloads that you have, they allow for such distribution. And then we see technologies that containers that will help with this, let's say methodologies and procedures like and packaging models like microservices that allow for this. But it's going to take a long time.
It's a little bit of a misnomer that folks don't have the ability, or the tools don't exist to understand your workload, characteristics and capacity planning. I think it's out there. You can understand at least to a better extent than you could maybe 5 years ago what your what your workload planning should look like. And you can plan a little bit better. I'm not saying that's 100%, but
I'll have a potentially not different but more eventually forward-looking view of this. So if I look at cloud, and being cloud on-prem or on a public, and you normalize consumption because you expose infrastructure to be consumed either as code or developers or something. When you talk about capacity planning or basically capacity augmentation or something that you want to look at how much of these I put on these pieces of boxes, as you just mentioned, one of the things that I believe will become the norm of the upcoming years is that you won't make these calculations anymore. You're going to use machine learning to predict this for you. Why I'm saying this? Because you have a lot of the so far legacy, as he mentioned, the existing business running my money today applications, and you need to have visibility out of those to define how their dependency on this application space are. At the same time, you have part of this as a cloud ready when a piece is on the cloud and other pieces here, and the whole cloud native that runs as a full microservices stack developed right now. You need to have cohesiveness on how you do capacity planning. The only way you do that is you have full visibility, and when you have full visibility, you define the dependencies between that. And that is going to be a machine learning exercise. Why? Because it will be able, because of scale, to predict where your capacity planning would be. Which, if you go 10 years ago, we basically kind of have an idea of our capacity planning tool because we are siloed on a particular environment, the mainframes, as you said, or something that we're running a particular workloads only. Now you have a vast availability of potential resource for the developers. Everything is becoming digital. It's becoming more accessible. So the technology will empower that anyhow. So I guess capacity planning will be better, but will be thought differently. And you already come with technology. Cisco is developing, IBM is developing. There is a lot of people that are coming to the market with this new approach. That's basically not new. It's just a normal evolution to catch up on how the environment has evolved. So from that sense, capacity planning and all that relates to this, in my view, will be dependent upon the full visibility that relates to security, where you discussed it before, and also predict or give you some hints on where you should go.
Thanks for watching, and please join us for our continued discussion on cloud computing on our next release. If you are interested in seeing more cloud-related content, have comments or questions for our guests, want input from us about the topics we discussed today, would like to participate as a guest on the rounds, or have anything else you want to share, you can do so using our social media as described in the accompanying graphic. And please comment, rate, and subscribe. We'll see you next time on The Rounds.